I'm Robin Sullivan, and I'm here with Michael J. Sullivan, wave, yep, and Tim Gerard Reynolds. And we just got done with recording the majority of the Disappearance of Winter's Daughter in studio, and we're here to answer a few questions of them. So here goes. I'm going to start with Tim. Tim,
Yes.
What was your favorite character in the Disappearance of Winter's Daughter?
Oh, that's a hard one actually, because I like Villar.
Mm-hmm.
I love Gabriel Winter. He's my favorite. I think Gabriel Winter's my favorite character because he's such a small cameo, but he's really intense.
He did a great job with his voice.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that was one of the best parts when he was recording
Yeah.
it. It was fascinating because he got this really great accent and it got very intense at the end there. So it was like his breathing was intense enough to make it very, very powerful.
But you know, there's so many to choose from. Evelyn Hemsworth is just a
Evelyn?
Not Evelyn, Evelyn Hemsworth.
even. I can't, you know, I was Evelyn and Evelyn every other word. It was terrible.
Well, it's because he knew someone who was named Evelyn, so
spelled
it kind of messed it up.
So, Michael, who was your favorite character from Tim's interpretation of a character?
Oh, well, like I said, I really did like what he did with Gabriel, but of course, I guess I have a fondness for Evelyn.
Evelyn?
Evelyn, I'm sorry, Evelyn. Just because when I wrote her, she was my favorite, so, and then he brought her to life, which was great.
Okay. All right, so this is a question from someone on Reddit, and they asked Tim, how do you choose the voices for the character? Are there times when he thinks he's gotten it wrong in retrospect, or almost voices that he decided against?
Yes, I always wondered this myself.
How do you choose? How do you choose
Actually,
your
the
voice?
one time that happened just was in this book. Was like when I started Evelyn. You said no. I think it might.
Yeah,
be
you had a little bit. It was too
direction.
sinister sounding. Yeah.
Yeah. I made it sort of too sinister, and then you were absolutely right. I mean, oh, of course. Generally speaking, what happens is if the book, it will suggest that the characters, if they're really vivid, like in Michael's case, the characters are really vivid, like they're conjured up in front of me, and a face appears, and the face just dictates what the voice is going to be. I just try to do an impression of what I'm hearing in my head. And that's how I remember the voices too. I don't make annotations. I just, you know, when the character comes up, I see the face, and the face makes me remember what the voice is like. So it's kind of a weird instinctual mnemonic system or whatever. But how I come up with voices, I don't know. I don't know.
do you think about it before when you're reading through the first time? Because you read through the script or the book.
Well, actually, that was
Well, with a book like Michael's, which is, you know, the characters just leap out and the voices just come in my head, you know. Unless then, of course, you describe what the voice is later in the book. That means that takes a bit of a mental sort of stepping back. I have to go, oh God, I got to reevaluate that because you've described the voice and what happened like at page 200 or something. And so that I would have to kind of go back on that. But generally speaking, the vividness of the characters, maybe their social status, where they come from, you know.
Well, I noticed that you play off sometimes the way I wrote the dialogue. Because some people I give sort of an ethnicity to them because of the way I wrote the dialogue, and other people I have a very formal sound because I'm not using contractions. I'm using it, and they're using more, you know, larger words. I think you pick up on that. You give it that kind of a highfalutin kind of tone.
Yeah, and some of it also comes down to precedent too, where I may have just picked something like in book one, and then I've got to stick with that. Like the dwarves all have northern British accents in Michael's books.
Because that's just what dwarves are. You know, they have to be
the
Scottish.
miners, you know. I was thinking of the
miners.
Yeah.
okay. And this is another question from Reddit. Someone wanted to know whether you read the books beforehand or do you just go in and read it cold.
I have to read all the books beforehand. You can't do it cold. That's just the way it is. So I'm getting to read every book twice.
Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting because he'll be reading along and he'll just start laughing, and everyone in the room will say, "What's so funny?" He goes, "Well, I know what's coming next," and obviously he's read the thing before.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, I suppose it would be possible to read something cold, but you know, what if the person is, you know, the male hero who turns into a woman? And you don't know. You know what I mean?
That,
You need to know how the story goes.
For that very reason, when I wrote the series, because he's also doing Legends, I had to tell him a lot more details of where the series was going to go, so he knows the progression and the story arc of several of the characters, so he can know where he can change them and keep them consistent. So that was something else we had to talk about.
Yeah, And sign confidentially agreements.
Yeah, we will kill you.
Yeah.
Very high security on that.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another Reddit person asked, what advice would you give someone who's trying to break into being a narrator?
Oh,
Don't. More competition.
no, there's plenty of books out there. There's plenty of room for narrators. Okay, so what advice would I give straight off the bat? Well, is your voice interesting? Can you tell a story? Because that's the most important thing, I think, is that it's not so much narration as storytelling and relating a story. And, you can only really know that if other people say you're good at that. And perhaps you might want to try reading out loud to people and see what they think. If they're giving you the thumbs up, or if you think you can do it quite well, then, it's in like, we're at Audible here, but it's in producers' best interest to keep hearing new voices. So I think there's usually some kind of submission process with most audiobook publication companies, and you can just record something on your iPhone. It doesn't have to be great quality. They just need to hear what you sound like, if you're interesting to listen to, because they don't want people listening to a dentist's drill for 30 hours or whatever. So they want people who have good, an interesting voice, I guess.
Well, the thing I've always noticed when you write, when you read my sentences, you don't just read the sentence. You make a little story in the sentence. It begins here, and you have an inflection that kind of comes up, and it comes to a resolution. So it's like every time you do a sentence, you're actually telling a little tiny story when you do it. That way, because I've listened to other narrators, and they're just kind of drone from beginning to end, and there's like no change in pitch or tone. But you analyze, and you've done it. You've read a sentence. You're like, oh, no, wait. No, like, what? It was perfect. You're like, no, let me do it again. And then you go, oh, yes, that was such a much better way of reading that. And it just amazes me that you can do that with a single short sentence.
So you bring up an interesting point, actually. Another thing that, if you're starting out and you want to do this, it's good to get an idea as to where you might land when it comes to genre. Like you say, people have drony voices. Well, drony voices are actually quite good when it comes to like business books or self-help books or academic texts. Maybe you have a really interesting voice that can engage people, but isn't very colorful. You got to kind of get realistic with yourself and ask yourself, as if you were a different person, how would I market myself if I was an audiobook narrator? What kind of books would I be reading? And that's getting to know or coming to a decision about that can be important. And that can also point you in directions. Like, for example, there are some publishers that produce only certain kinds of books, like erotica or romance or just science fiction, just library books, like literature or whatever. There are companies that do only those kind of things.
Gotcha. And someone else asked if you could name 3 other narrators that you really enjoy listening to.
Oh, I can name a lot.
You're going to get him in a lot of trouble right now. So I'm sure you're
okay, you don't have to keep it to 3.
All right.
They asked for 3, but you can go
well,
for as many as one.
I mean, my favorites of all time, of course, is Juliet Stevenson, and I think I wrote something on Audible about that recently. I love listening to some British guys like I've forgotten his name now, Simon Russell Beale. But here, like Catherine Calgren's brilliant. Barbara Rosenblatt, George Goodell, of course, Jonathan Davis. Who else do I listen to and learn from? Gosh, lots of people. Suzanne Torren, she's amazing. So they all do different things as well. They do things that are quite a lot different. I kind of like a lot of non-fiction books and stuff like that. So, there was a guy called Nelson Runger. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he was a wonderful narrator of histories and biographies and stuff. I used to love him. Listen to him.
Michael, what do you think about having someone other than Tim Gerard Reynolds do your fiction books?
Do you have large ways of threatening me? I don't know. I mean, did you have my wife kidnapped or something? No, that probably is not going to ever happen unless he dies. You're not going to die, are you?
No, but by the time I die, they'll have AI that'll be able to emulate my voice. I'm pretty sure about it. Okay.
I mean, the good thing is I think I'm older than you are, so I'll probably die before you do. It'll be fine.
The way I'm eating, I'm probably going before you.
Tim, is there any types of books that you don't like to narrate?
Yeah, you know, back in the early days, I have taken the odd erotica project. I'm not going to do that again. Also, I'm not really big into religious books, you know. So, you know, because I find that problematic because I'm kind of maybe don't agree or don't, you know, believe or do whatever it is. So sometimes I won't really go in that direction. Not that I'd be adverse if somebody offered it to me and they haven't. I might have to have a think about that, but because you know, I don't want to take really sides of that thing. And that's about it. I'll read anything else. I'll read a telephone book, really. Yeah.
Okay.
And you probably make it sound very good.
Yes. A.
Arthur Albert. Okay, how about, do you have any favorite character from Red Rising?
From Red Rising, well, the main character, of course, is my favorite character from Red Rising.
Yeah. Oh,
Gerard, yes.
okay. Let me see if I can find one. I think there was one. Oh, this is the other question from Reddit. Somebody wanted to know what your 3 favorite series are that you've narrated.
Well, of course, they're all.
No, you don't have to say right here just because
No,
we're
but they
here.
are actually seriously though. They are up there. Of course, Pierce Brown. Pierce Brown's an extraordinary series as well. I'm trying to think of other series. Oh, of course, there's the Cycle of Galand, the Cycle of Iran, and then the Cycle of Galand. I really love those books as well.
Okay.
Edward W. Robertson. They're really great. I look forward to doing those actually. Yeah.
Oh, good. Michael, anything you want to say in conclusion as we wrap up here?
Oh, I was thinking that I assume this is coming out in deference to Winter's Daughter, so I just say we just got done with almost the whole recording. There's still one more day of recording, and I think everyone's going to be really quite happy with this recording that we've done. I think Tim has done a fantastic job of bringing my characters to life as he usually does. But I got to hear most of it prior to it coming out this time, and I think it's fun to actually see it happen live. The problem is that most of you can't see the outtakes, and you'll never see the outtakes because they don't actually record them, but some of them are great. Unfortunately, we should do an outtake tape sometime. Yeah,
that would be fun.
This guy's great. Just remember that.
Any final words you want, Tim?
Oh, I don't know. Keep listening to the books. Audiobooks are great. You know, it keeps me employed.
And we like that very much. Okay, so this is Robin Sullivan signing off, and just wanted to remind everyone that the Kickstarter will be ending in a few days, and we appreciate all your support so far. Thank you.